it's safe. But if somebody is doing it from a true investment standpoint, I think that right now, stock market, and if you don't know what to buy, put it in the S&P 500, is a really, really hard thing to beat right now. These are historic pullbacks. You're probably never going to see this in your lifetime again. And people are going to regret looking back and go, gee, that was such a great buying opportunity if I had only known. And you have to realize with investing, it's never easy when you're in it, but you have to realize that is the best course of action to take.
And then what about, there are a couple of other things that keep popping up on the internet. Cannabis is one of them as an investment.
Yep.
And also the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're a big fan of either of those, but just talk about those as diverse, investment diversity.
Alternative investments, sure. The cannabis thing, I think, had potential in the early years just because, again, what I was talking about, everybody thinks it's going to be good. And I always tell clients that it's not about what you think that matters, it's what everybody else thinks. So I could think that a cannabis investment is the worst, dumbest idea in the world. But if I think that everybody else thinks it's the greatest, I'm going to be buying it. Because it doesn't matter what I think, I have to figure out what everybody else thinks. And that's really part of the trick. But the problem with the cannabis, if you understand basic economic theories and things, that it's easily reproducible. And whenever you see that something can be easily reproduced, you have to be very cautious. Because if it really is the goose that lays the golden egg, guess what? Not hard to plant, not hard to have another company come up and produce it. And then they start competing for profits. And it's a race to the bottom. So I don't think it's really going to turn out to be what everybody thinks it is. I just don't. Maybe in the first couple of years, there could still be a little bit of upside. Would I think it's going to beat the overall market? Probably not. I wouldn't. Now, cryptocurrencies are a little different. They're essentially digital gold. You can't inflate it like, the government can inflate money by printing off more dollars. But you can't do it with cryptocurrencies. And of the cryptos, there's a lot of them that are out there, but I think that Bitcoin, just because of the name, is the one to take if somebody wanted to speculate on it. Ethereum was another big one, but they kind of seem to be losing ground. You don't hear much about them anymore. But during times like this, you see gold spike, and you'll see people wanting to go into Bitcoin, places to park their money. Just in case there's a worldwide crisis somewhere.
Yeah, well, speaking of worldwide crisis, if the airlines, for example, are talking of going bankrupt by the end of this year if they don't get some sort of a bailout, we know how that's worked with banks in the past.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that?
That's a tough one. Part of the thing is that everybody thinks that capitalism is about a profit system, and it really isn't. It's about profits and losses. And if a company isn't managing the assets well or efficiently, and they're going bankrupt, maybe that's the thing to let them do. So there's a big controversy about whether the government should step in with taxpayer dollars and say, we're going to bail you out for your bad decisions. It sounds good on paper. People say, we're going to keep all these jobs. We're going to do this, more money in the economy. It's not necessarily true. Somebody else will come up and buy those assets. Those planes, those hangars, those mechanics are not going away. They'll just get transferred to somebody who's using it more efficiently. So I'm not always opposed to saying, if somebody can't manage the risk out there, let them go under. But the thing that's so unusual about this is that the airlines are not in the business of managing risk of oil, which is why they usually hedge it with futures and things like that. They're in the business of hedging the risk of passenger travel and demand. And this is something that just people never saw. So on the other hand, you could say if it's something that's going to affect all of the airlines and going to crush the entire industry, then, maybe it is a good thing to give them some type of concessions to keep them afloat.
Yeah, well, of course, it's not just the airlines. You're talking about the cruise business, the hotel business, the restaurant business. Pretty much all education business, university level and private schools and all the rest. So we know, in fact, that within every crisis, and even the Chinese symbol for opportunity includes crisis.
Crisis, right?
And opportunity, yeah. So there's always two sides to every coin. But of course, like you said earlier, this is an unprecedented time with unprecedented things happening. But what are some strategies for people to get through this roller coaster time, keeping our sanity, as well as our whatever is left of whatever retirement funds or assets we might have?
Sure. I think the main thing to remember is that, again, this is all out of panic. It's not necessarily because of people's beliefs that this is what the future valuations are going to be. There's what's called a risk premium that's being built into the markets right now, and that just essentially means that sellers are having to about give away these shares just to find a buyer. They're so panicking, they're thinking they're going to lose their houses and everything else, and I don't want to do that, so I don't care, just give me something for my shares. I've got to get to cash. And this is why there's another saying in the business that during a crisis that all correlations go to one. And what that means that sometimes, if the stock market's down, real estate is up, or something, the dollar's down, gold is up. You get these kind of inverse movements. And that's the whole purpose of diversification. But when there's a panic, everything moves together. Everything goes down because people are even selling gold, saying, I don't care, I just got to get to cash. And so you have to realize that these levels that we're at there's not necessarily because this is where the value of the stocks belong. It's just out of fear, unprecedented fear. The other thing is that it causes people, hedge funds, institutional investors who borrow money to be forced to sell with what are called maintenance calls or margin calls. They have to sell. That pushes prices lower. It makes other people panic. Those people sell, it causes more margin calls, and on it goes. It's what's called a price-to-price feedback loop. Everybody watches the price. That causes more people to act. That changes the price. It causes more people to act, and the snowball just continues to get bigger and bigger. I have a former student that works on a Wall Street firm. One of her clients is a hedge fund who last week, get this, got $1 billion with a B dollar maintenance call in a day.
Oof.
So the point is, how do you meet those? You sell, and that just pushes prices down. It causes more people to panic. So it's not really where people are saying, you know what, I think the value of the stocks in the S&P are at this level. It's just strictly from fear. So the best thing to remember is that the valuations here are super, super low because of a very big fear factor or a risk premium. So the thing is, if you don't have the cash to take at least some nibbles, down at these lows and start accumulating shares, at least hold through them. What you don't want to do is to be selling at these levels.
Right. So what about the future economic system? Is this going to shatter, or disrupt the whole industry?
Well, I think it will always make people realize that risk is everywhere. And it's not that it wasn't there before. It's just that it now makes us realize it. Like 911 caused a whole new level of risk. People are going, gee, never thought this could happen. I mean, seriously, that's something that was just so twisted that you just never, ever would have expected that to happen. And so, but now people are thinking, who would have thought that a virus could shut down the whole, seriously. I mean, it's incredible that a virus could shut down the whole world. So I think there's always going to be that element of people saying, you know what, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And I think it might inject a little bit more volatility into the markets than is, at least for, the next few years. But that's not a bad thing, because you have to realize that it's volatility and risk that allocates wealth over the long term. So if you really want to make money, the last thing you want is a risk-free environment. So the better thing is to add some more risk, but understand the strategies for how to deal with it. So I think it's going to, always add a little bit more volatility. Next time we start hearing about a virus or a coronavirus, we could start seeing very quick sell-offs because people think, here we go again.
But something you just said a minute ago makes so much sense, that these things can always happen. And, we've had the crashes that you mentioned earlier. Then there was 9/11, for example. Good times and bad times. Any thoughts about that as a more philosophical approach to investing?
Well, again, I think the important thing to remember is that those risks are always there. And just because you might not be aware of them, or just because the market has not been made aware of them, doesn't mean that they're not there. They've just now been brought to the forefront. So as I always teach investors, always ask the two most important words, what if? I hear a lot of traders say, that's not going to happen. I say, I agree with you. It probably isn't going to happen. But what if it does? Are you prepared to handle it? And if you approach investing from that standpoint, it'll probably make you think twice about the way that you're structuring your portfolios or the risks that you're taking.
And that makes sense certainly from both a logical approach to investing, but like you say, taking on a hypothetical example, managing your emotions so you don't go nuts and then do stupid things.
Absolutely true. If that's part of your mindset, you're not going to. I've been through these so many times. It's the same movie under different names and different characters, but it's always the same outcome. So you just live through them. It gives you a different mindset and allows you to survive.
I think I've heard you say in the past that strategies work great until they don't.
That's true. It's a perfect example of it. And that's just why you'll hear a lot of traders say, I use this strategy, or I use, for those who understand options, a covered call, and I do this and I collect this much money. I say that's true and it works great. Everything you're saying is true until it isn't. And you need to ask, what if it doesn't? And they never ask that question because up until this point, it never happened. And now it's going to cause people to realize it can happen.
Cool. All right, then. Well, gosh, as usual, you've just been a font of wisdom, knowledge. Really so grateful for you taking the time in this time. And you must be really busy.
It is quite busy.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Bill Johnson. If people want to contact you, what's the best way they can do that?
Probably the easiest is through the website optionsatoz.com, and there's a contact us button. They can send me an email. Be more than happy to talk to anybody. But best thing is just stay safe. Understand this is just normal mechanics of the market, just to an exaggerated degree. But it's not the first time we've seen crises, and you just got to ride through them.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So thank you, Bill, and thank you to our listeners for being here with us today on the SOB Radio Network. And do tune in to listen to archival shows, but also know that we're here for you each week, bringing you new and interesting people and ideas to make your life better and safer at this point of time. And do remember that the life you live is the legacy you leave. Bye-bye now.